What is up YouTube? Back with another video, and today's video is about real deceleration training. Deceleration training is one of the worst topics in the strength and conditioning industry, and it annoys me when I see stupid posts on training that is considered deceleration training but it's doing nothing for for actual deceleration. Recently I've been talking a lot about deceleration on my Instagram posts, and I actually had like a little bit of a post that went kind of like a bit viral in my world. I was quite surprised that this video did that well. I didn't think this is a topic that other people really thought about. For me, deceleration training has become a topic in the strength and conditioning world that has been butchered, absolutely, by terrible exercises that I think honestly does nothing for your deceleration. So typically when it comes to deceleration, you'll see like these people, coaches or whatever, always try and do like an exercise. Like you always see kind of like a band putting them a bit forward and then them like in a completely straight line and just stopping, you know, like that type of thing. I hate those exercises. I think they're absolutely useless. And then you also have some people who just do like a normal, like a really low intent, and that's the reason why these are so useless as well. Or these really low intent, slow exercises where all they're ever doing is just running and then stopping, coming to a stop at a slightly faster pace than they would just normally just slacking down from a run. And then you have to ask yourself, when you look at real agility where deceleration takes place, ask yourself, is that really what you see? And oftentimes I think it's a really important concept in strength and conditioning when what you see in the training for the actual thing is really far from the demands and the intensity of the actual thing. Then you really have to question the efficacy of this exercise that you are doing. If I'm focusing on doing gymnastics, and in gymnastics I am absolutely trying to max out the shoulder mobility, the shoulder strength, everything, but my training never goes further than a pink TheraBand that I'm using, probably you could assume that that training is not enough to actually get me better at gymnastics. While the same counts for deceleration. I think deceleration training is done so terribly in gyms and with S&C coaches that honestly you're not really training deceleration at all. Maybe you're doing it like at a really low pace, and I don't know if that does a lot for you in your training. What I like to do in this video is I like to tell you what I like for deceleration training, and I believe this will be way more helpful. So the cream of the crop for deceleration training that I prefer is giving a task to an athlete. The first thing that I think is the problem when you just tell someone to go forward or get a band to take them forward, like you see in these videos, is the intensity. It's the predictability of it. The predictability turns the intensity into something that sucks. Because it's so predictable, the athlete can easily withhold themselves. There's always this inhibition to go harder because they know what's coming after going hard is stopping. So there's always that inhibition. You're not sprinting that hard when you know in 2 meters you're going to decelerate. But in a game it's not that way. In a game you're sprinting hard and a defender comes across and then you decelerate. That's unpredictable. You didn't decide you're going to decelerate. You reacted and then you decelerated. And that is the important part about deceleration training, which I think all of those drills you see a lot of times, that is why I call them sometimes a bit useless, especially if you only ever stay there. Maybe you can use it for preparatory drills as prep before you start these things because it's so low intensity, you can probably only ever argue that it's good for prep. And that is what I think is so important about the first point of deceleration training, is you've got to give a task. You have to give a task for an athlete to complete. And the first task needs to force them to do it full out. I'm going to take the video I used on Instagram for an example here. The task was get over the bench. Jump over the bench at full pace. If I want to make them do it even better and with more intent, I'm going to say jump over the bench and make sure you get over this cone. Jumping over the bench gives them momentum because of the air time they get. There's momentum over there. They need to complete that task. They need to build up pace in order to get over that bench. There is no slowing down or doing anything other than getting over that bench, even though they know what is coming. And secondly, then I add in the layer of getting them to decelerate from task A and then get out of there. So it's not just a deceleration to a dead stop, because a deceleration without an acceleration means nothing to me, most of the time. Yes, you can argue sometimes sport doesn't happen that way, but I think it's just best if you train it together. So for me, I would like a second task which immediately gets an athlete to move to the other way. To stop immediately. So it's got to help them to do that task full out, which is task 1. Task 2 is to get out of there. Stop whichever momentum you had from task 1 and get out of there. Like you see in this drill that I implemented over here, that is essentially it. It can be with someone that's chasing you, or you're racing someone, and you see immediately you get these side steps. You're jumping, which is momentum, and doof, you got a side step. I'm not saying this is the only golden drill, but I'm saying this a lot of times is what you see in sport. Deceleration is a reaction, so you can't train it predictably. I think this is something that a lot of coaches miss in their deceleration training, and therefore I think if you're going to train it, I think deceleration training is always best trained with a partner. Yes, you can still train it by yourself. It's a bit difficult because you still have that aspect of training alone, but for example, if you do the bench drill, yes, you can easily jump over the bench and then say you have to make it over a certain distance. Yeah, we'll give you enough time to not, if the task is difficult enough to force you to not inhibit the effort you have to do in your first effort and then have to decelerate the other side. So it is pretty good if you're going to do it alone still, but always I prefer it with a partner. And honestly, that is why I think deceleration training is misused and underutilized in training. So if you're going to train deceleration training, I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek on how you need to train it as an athlete. Number 1, play more sports. Play more sports where you are constantly accelerating and stopping, which is decelerating, and just going the whole time. Good examples of this is paddle, squash, tennis, touch rugby, football, fires football. And when I say play more of these sports, I don't necessarily mean go sign up at a club and go play. I mean play recreationally. The amount of acceleration and deceleration reps that you get while playing these sports, you could never replicate in your training days. And it is not nearly as effective. I recommend this to my athletes a lot. They don't always take it seriously, but you need to do this. Another example is just playing games. For example, games with a ball that you can make up. Like we play pong tennis with a Pilates ball that we play a lot with my athletes. Even in this, you can see a lot of small deceleration, acceleration steps. And it's great. And that, therefore, I think these types of games should be your foundation. Number 2 would be competing with your friends in games like this, or doing them by yourselves. That would be number 2. Number 1, which is obviously be at the top of the pyramid, which is also not, in my opinion, the most. It is very important in athletic development, but not the most important, but it should be a part of it. It's overall in your athletic development, it plays a much bigger role, but when we're talking only about agility, this is probably not the biggest one, but definitely a super important one, and I think you should be training this at least 2 to 3 times per week. And that is just general plyometrics, doing a lot of jumps, especially doing continuous work. A lot of times for deceleration, you'll see jumping recommended, but you'll see a lot of times just like a normal altitude drop, landing in athletic position. Holy shit, do I hate those. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I just get so annoyed with people just doing gimmicky exercises because it looks like that. But anyway, so altitude drops, not necessarily the best thing you do. I think the best types of plyometrics are actual plyometrics where there is a ground contact and then there is basically into another leap. So there's hitting on the floor, and from that you are releasing back into the ground, which is continuous, and doing that. So bounce, skips, all those types of things, hops, you need to be doing them. And I think to add in that, you can obviously check out the plyo guy. I think I forgot his name, Watson something. Deep tier work is also pretty good for agility because if you're doing lower positions, it's really beneficial. But essentially, I still think that plyometrics play a huge role in this. And I think a lot of times it gets recommended that you need to do like these more altitude drop types of style because it's decelerating, you're falling and then you're stopping. Whereas I think it's just better to do plyometrics. You don't have to do all this gimmicky stuff. But that is essentially how you train real agility and how you should think about it. Thank you for watching today's video. If you're an athlete watching this again and you like the videos I'm watching, you like the takes I do and you want to be coached by me, you can join the Athletic Endeavors group for only 170 Rand for my South Africans, which is $10 for any other person watching this per month. We have a new training block every single month and you can join for the first week for free. It's affordable training and it is quality. I'll see you in the next video.